Hello, Vital. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is an international session. Pleasure to
Yeah,
be here.
exactly. Yeah, most of my guests are actually international. I haven't had like too many from Europe so far, but I hope it will change. Let's see where this project will take me. But yeah, you've got an interesting story, and that's the main reason why I wanted to have you on. And
Thank
obviously,
you.
you've had your hardships in your youth, and later you worked at the Cirque du Soleil. You were performing there,
Yes,
which I find very interesting because obviously, now I see what you do now, and I see the similarities, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that you probably learned there that
absolutely.
helped you translate into the work you do now, and
Yes,
maybe let's start there, right? Like,
sure.
uh, yeah, just maybe talk about it a bit. How it helped you navigate.
Yes, it's actually a very fascinating question because the journey, I think fundamentally, my soul, I'm an artist. I wear different hats, but I come from a place of an artist where I want to change the world. I want to express myself. I want a sense of freedom, being able to live with authenticity, which are really hard to do in what I consider a modern judgmental world where social media allows us to be more judgmental than ever with
Yeah,
so many people. And so some of the fundamental things I learned with Cirque du Soleil, going in, joining them, I really love the fact that they said to themselves, we are a circus, we're going against tradition, we don't use animals. And everybody said, but that's not a circus, you're crazy, you'll never succeed. And they basically said, watch us. We're going to do what we believe in, the way we do it with our signature. And maybe it's not commercial, it's not accepted today, but I'm a firm believer that when we do things with passion, conviction, purpose, success is inevitable. Now it's a question of how do you define success? Is it financial? Is it fulfillment of your soul? Is it bringing value to society? All of the above.
yeah. So, what is success to you? Is it that and more?
So over the years, for me, success has changed. Off camera, we talked a little bit about sports. I used to be an aspiring soccer player. And I was honored and privileged. I played one game, only one game for the national youth team of Belgium. For me,
Mm,
that was success. I'd reached the pinnacle. I'd reached the dream. And then here I am 35, 40 years later. And now success is not necessarily the achievement. It's how I feel about something. So for me right now, I'm living a successful life where I'm not where I would like to be financially, but I'm doing the things that fulfill me. That for me is success. I feel a level of freedom in who I am. I've learned to embrace my demons. And for me, that's a level of empowerment that feels like success. I've been able to take off my mask.
mm.
That's success for me.
Yeah, beautiful. So the because you talk a lot about empathy, right? Like
Yes,
that's your niche that you chose
yes.
probably from straight from the beginning with the social media, and you know I probably know what it feels like to be on the other end, right? Like when you don't have any boundaries, when you just let other people walk over you, when you think, okay, this guy needs the help, let me help him, and then it's just an absolute disaster for you on that end.
Yeah.
was that was that your learning curve? Like, was that through understanding what you are and how empathy actually works, and what you need, in terms of boundaries and stuff like that?
Totally,
uh,
totally. I think for the most part, again, going back to the essence of who I am, and I think this is the essence of who anybody is. Whoever you sort
mm,
of were as a 7-year-old, that's fundamentally your character, your DNA. I've always been in a position where I wanted to help people. I hated injustice. When I saw a kid get bullied at school, I would step in.
mm,
I couldn't stand this level of manipulation and bullying. And so that's innately who I am. I didn't know that it was empathy. I didn't understand the level of emotional intelligence that I was already implementing. But in growing up, if we align with who we are, the message and our purpose becomes more defined. And so I started to realize I'm a kind person, but I get taken advantage of. And I hate that feeling. People don't value what I bring to the table. And then so I had to start learning very painful lessons. If I want to give and be helpful, to your point, Max, I have to set very clear boundaries. I'm willing to give this, but that's as much as I'm willing to give. And if you disrespect me, as kind as I might be, I will put the boxing gloves on, we'll get in the ring, and I will kick your, you know. And so these were painful lessons that I had to learn, because everybody thinks empathy is a weakness.
Mm.
He's going to be kind. He's going to forgive me. He's going to understand. He's a pushover. No. I understand, but what I don't allow is disrespect. So anybody who's out there who's empathetic, maintain your empathy, but honor you. And sometimes that means being a warrior.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with my youth as well. You know, I've always like hated injustice. Like I always thought I'd need to step in, and later I also got bullied. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's like the direct connection also to being an empath. You know, because like I think it makes you a target probably, right? Because
Yes.
people see that you see through the bullshit, and mostly those people that kind of, you know, in school that are leading the big groups, you know, you don't want to be part of, right? Then you're just a target, right? But yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, I always say, you know, it's like Buddha heart, demon hand, right? That's how I work as well, you know.
Yeah, and I think going a little bit deeper, I think on the topic of healthy men, I think a healthy man is kind, is protective. When you're strong, you don't have to show the world that you're strong. You're there to protect your family, those you care for. That's the job of a healthy, strong man.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I have to flex my muscles every day and remind you of, but you know, every now and again, the lion, king of the jungle, doesn't have to show everybody every day that I'm the lion. But when the hyenas get out of line, I'm going to remind you, I am a lion. And I think that's what empaths, kind people need to do. Have this ability to be strong, to dig into that sometimes angry side of us. You know, I think if you were bullied, I'm sure there were times you were angry. And in our kindness, we have a conflict. Well, I can't be angry because I'm a good, kind person. Well, you can. It's a human emotion. But it depends how you implement that anger and for what reasons.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, right? Because obviously, you know, when you kind of have these situations, right, where you mistreated, and then you just think, okay, am I going to become that person as well when I just, you know, basically do the same thing back to them, right? And that's when that conversation starts. It's like, okay, how do I do this? How do I navigate? Do I just walk away? You know, do I say something? Like, what do I do, right? Because it's
Yeah.
an interesting one, because like oftentimes I walked away, you know, and like the older I got, the more I said, okay, now, you know, let's do this, let's solve this, right? Sometimes it, you know, ended in a ruffle or whatever, right? It doesn't mean, I mean, I think it's important sometimes to just like stand up for yourself, right? Like also physically,
Yes.
but it's difficult when you're young, right? Like with me, it was like I was always a little bit smaller. I did my last little, you know, jump in my height when I was like 18. So basically throughout school I was smaller than you know the big guys, and I was always up to the big guys, obviously, right? Because I, you know, I didn't take no shit, and it was interesting. I mean, I started with judo very early on, but it didn't really help me that much. You know, it's like it's not aggressive enough. It's more like a,
On the
you know,
topic of martial arts, I think maybe
yeah,
we'll both relate to this. I look up to Bruce Lee as a philosophy. You know, the guy can kick anybody's ass.
yeah,
There are times when you do walk away. But there are times when I need to stand here and I need to show you that you will respect me. And if you don't respect me, here are the consequences. So it's a level of self-defense. It's a level of honor and dignity. He was not a violent man. He didn't go out and just use his abilities for the sake of inflicting pain. He was very strategic. And I think for people like us, we have to be strategic. There are times to walk away.
yeah.
And it's hard. Sometimes it's very hard to walk away.
Yeah, it's being like water, right? So
Oh, be like
almost,
water, my friend. Water can crash, water can flow. Put it in a teacup, it becomes the cup. Putting it into a whatever.
yeah,
Yes, I love that quote.
yeah. Well, it's true. You know, water can be still, water can be rough. It can eat you alive, but it can also, you know, help you float, right? It's a great metaphor in
Yes.
many senses. Amazing.
My brothers were
So
martial artists. They taught me a lot about sort
yeah,
of things like humility, trying to stay calm. And
Mm,
so, you know, I have a great admiration for martial arts as a philosophy, not as a physical combat
yeah.
sport per se, but as a philosophy. It's very powerful.
Well, any good teacher, in a sense, will teach you the philosophy, right? Like I love Muay Thai. You know, not so much like kickboxing and stuff like that, but any you know, Sifu I had before, it was always that component in in the art, right? Like, why is it this way? You know, like
Yeah.
how do you move? You know, what's the art behind it? Especially the Thais, right? They're really into this and into the art of movement, right? Like
Yes.
if you look at an original fight over there, like you see how they're moving. You know, before the fight, after, it's a lot of respect in there, right? Like everything stays in
Yes.
the ring, and it's very well, you know, thought through what you're doing. It's not so much, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna kill this guy. Maybe some
Exactly.
people do that, right? But like it's a lot about the sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally
very
agree.
beautiful. I think every kid should actually engage in some art, right? Martial art, in a
I
sense.
would agree with that because some of the fundamental lessons I learned through observation of watching my brothers, even if it's just a question of discipline,
Mm,
they taught me meditation when at the time I'm like, this is stupid. Come on, you're gonna have me sit at the top of the stairs and I mean, come on, really? But then here I am years later realizing, oh, they planted a seed that now brings me so much value. So yes, I think you know, out of every activity, every sport, I like to paint. I do work out. Being a Cirque du Soleil acrobat, I was very healthy. I'm a firm believer in mind, body, spirit. We
yeah,
have to nurture all aspects of our existence, and the mind, when in alignment with the body, it becomes a very beautiful, powerful thing.
yeah, totally. I mean, the issue here is as well with being an empath, I think, is that you kind of neglect all these basics, right? Because like when someone is in your air, like in your energy, right, like in your space, that's all you see,
Yeah.
right? At least that's how it was with me. But like, you know, for someone that's like thinking about this for the first time, like what do you think are the absolute like basic pillars to, you know, have a peaceful life when you have these traits?
I think it starts with self awareness, like everything. Know thyself. Okay. We have to go inward and understand, who am I? Then it's a question of, I have to now either accept who I am, right? So there's a level of acceptance, and acceptance is not submission.
Mm,
Acceptance means I'm at peace with this, I'm good with this, and I'm going to build on this with a level of pleasure and joy. So you understand who you are, and in understanding who you are, that includes your core values. What's important to you, and then you can start reverse engineering, understanding this is what's important to me. This is what I need to protect. And that's how I've learned to become empowered. I stand for justice. So I have to protect that. And whenever I see injustice, I decide I'm going to protect this level of injustice. I'm anti-narcissist. So if somebody is going to try to manipulate me, there's a red flag. I know myself. This is important to me. I've got to protect this. So it starts with self-awareness. And then from there, once you've established the self-awareness, now you've got to put into place strategies. How? I know what I'm protecting. Now it's a question of, what do I need to do to enable me to protect the essence of who I am? To your point, Max, if I'm in an environment where there's a lot of negative energy, well, maybe the solution is I need to leave that environment. But if I'm aware of that, I can do that. If I'm not aware, I stay in the environment and then I'm exhausted the next day and I don't know why.
yeah, but most people realize it, but they don't pull the trigger with that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Because it takes courage. It takes
Yeah.
courage to accept this is who I am. And there is no weakness in saying, I'm now overwhelmed emotionally with this environment. I'm
Mm.
going to leave because I need to. That's not a weakness. That's actually very smart. I know who I am. And in order to optimize my being, this environment is not for me. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Auf Wiedersehen. Whatever. Au revoir, à la prochaine.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think walking away is amazing. I did it just a couple years ago. Last time, you know, I switched places. I moved to the ocean from the city,
Nice.
and yeah, I basically said, okay, this is it. You know, just took my family and left the city because I mean, it was during COVID. You know, it was
Yeah.
not that difficult, but to you know, turn our backs to that. But yeah, I think it's not easy, right? You lose a lot of stuff you've built. You lose a lot of connection. You lose a lot of friends, so called, right? But everything that's supposed to be there and stay there will stay there, right? Like everything else will just fall away, and I think that's good.
I
I
think it's good.
also, yeah,
I
totally.
like how you
Like,
said so-called friends.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the way it is, right? Like the real friends, they will be through that transition. They will be with you, and everybody else will just shed away. It's just the way it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, totally.
But
So you,
it is very painful shedding
mm,
that skin that no longer serves. It's very painful. It takes great courage. And what I'll say to anybody going through that journey is there's a quote from Robin Sharma that I love to share, and his quote says, "Change is hard at first, messy in the middle, gorgeous at the end." So the messy in the middle part is where it hurts.
mm,
But when you have the courage to go through the motions and move and protect yourself, you come out of it and it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. That's what you can look forward to.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I moved places a lot when I was younger, so for me it was not that difficult. I just said, okay, let's do it, let's try it. But I mean, it's always more difficult when you have family, right? Like everyone has to kind of embrace the change. But I mean, it's totally doable. I know a lot of people that also moved away in that time and during that time, and I think it was the right path. I don't know, were you in Vegas during that
I now
time?
live in Las Vegas and I moved here.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I moved here 30 years ago. And in
Wow.
terms of environment, this is not my environment.
Mm,
I don't align with the energy, everything that Las Vegas stands for. So going back to taking action steps, my action steps is I don't go to the strip where all the casinos are. I don't go there unless I have to for work because I
yeah.
know it's not my energy. So I
Mm,
live out on the outskirts. I get into nature as much as I can. So I'm aware that the strip exhausts me, so I don't go there.
yeah,
And
understandable.
I'll show level of my own hypocrisy now. I want to move. I've been looking for places to move, and I will be honest, I don't yet have the courage to just get up and leave. Because I haven't found a place that resonates enough to
Mm,
disrupt my life totally. So I'm also aware that I'm not fully following through on what I'm preaching.
yeah. Yeah, Vegas is an interesting place. I spent some time there in my 20s because my girlfriend, she grew up there and her family was there. And they also had from the family side, they had a show with tigers and stuff like that. And
Oh yeah,
so I really learned about Vegas aside of the strip, right? Like just like where you living, I think, I don't know. And then all those months that I was there was probably like 10 times on the strip, so really not that a lot. And
yeah,
it's really energy drenching, and I think for people like us especially,
yes,
it's just full with just like here right now there's a bunch of tourists that come on the island, right? And it's like it's just an explosion, right? And
yeah,
it makes me want to leave here during the summer, and in the winter it's beautiful. But
yeah.
that's just the way it is. These places, they always have the good and the bad side, obviously, right?
In Belgium, I lived in a small coastal town that was all about tourists. In the
Mm,
winter, like 15,000 people. In the summer, 150,000
yeah.
people. It was insane. And by the end of the summer, everybody, please leave. Just, give me peace
Yeah.
again. So I understand. I can relate to you.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, especially because I value my sleep now. Like before, I would sometimes go out, never like don't sleep for 2 to 3 days. It was doable, but now it's like impossible. If I miss
Wow.
a couple hours a night, like I'm just like walking zombie. I mean, especially with kids, you have to protect your energy. It's
I
like
don't have
for
kids,
me,
so I can't relate, Max. I cannot
yeah.
relate.
Well,
I have no idea.
like you can take my word for it.
Yeah.
It's like it's yeah, it's on the top of my list, to have a restful sleep and be fresh the next day. And I do my best. Like anything is that's kind of interrupting my sleep. It has to go, right.
Yeah.
Just the way it is. But that transition that you had, from your artist life, I mean, you're still an artist, right? You painting and
Yes.
stuff like that. But like, now you have a coaching business, also corporate, and how was that transition for you? How did you gain that trust from these companies? Was that through writing the books? Was that through the online presence? Like, take me back to those early days because that's always interesting to me. What were those baby steps
Oh,
in the beginning?
they were very painful baby steps. And it's a question of aligning with who I am. This is who I've become. This is the message. So really, again, fundamentally, it was the same message. As an artist, I'm trying to connect with another human being. I'm showing a part of me, my vulnerability, something that I can create. Hopefully I can touch your soul. That's how I view what I do. I want to touch somebody's soul. And so really, it was a painful transition, but I was doing the same thing, just with a different package, if that makes any sense. And so I had to learn to communicate. So as an acrobat, I'm communicating physically. As a dancer, I'm communicating physically, but it's the same core message. So I had to go back to school, so to speak, and learn. How do I translate this messaging and make it understandable by my new audience? Right? So my new audience, to your point, was corporate America. Now it's understanding what's corporate America's pain point. So as an entertainer, people want escapism. They come and see a show. They want to be mesmerized. That's their need. What's the need of my new audience member? Well, they want to make more profits. They want to have a better business model. They want to have employees that are happy. And so I take the same messaging of Cirque du Soleil, of an artist, and I simply translate it. But that process, trial and error. Like everything in life, if you want to try something new, there is pain. You've got to be willing to be terrible again. And a part of the things that I promote is the mindset of an artist. We get in front of a canvas and we do stuff. And if it looks horrible, so what? I can start again tomorrow. I can erase it. And if you apply some of that philosophy to life, it frees you. It gives you a level of courage to just do it. I know it sounds very simple, but it literally is a question of, if you know what you want, just do it and understand, I'm going to fall. I'll give you another quote that inspires me. Michael Jordan, athlete. We're afraid of failure for the most part, right? We don't want to fail. It's a horrible feeling. When Michael Jordan says this, I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost more than 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again. And that's why I succeed. So any endeavor, know that you're going to fail. But that's the journey. And I was willing to do that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah,
it took years. You know,
Yeah,
it didn't happen overnight. It took me 5-6 years to figure it out.
Like anything good, it takes time.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I just heard Roger Federer the other day in a video, and he talked about how tennis, basically helps you do exactly what you just talked about, right? Like it's that failure, that constant failure. You basically fail. The best players, fail almost 50% or more than 50% of their shots, right? And their points actually in the game. And so, you have to learn to leave that, to let it go, to focus on the next shot, right? And the shot after that, right? And I thought about that, and I'm like, shit, that's actually that's a training I got as well, as a kid. And because I thought about it, like, why do I not really care about failing that much? Because I fail all the time, like all the time. And I just get back up, and it never bothers me for some reason. And now I think through that training, because I started playing when I was 5, I think. Yeah. And played for many years. And I think that's a big part of it. And that's a great thing about sports, right? Like I never thought about that sport in that way. But yeah, this talk that he had like really helped me. Maybe I'll add it in the show notes.
I know the presentation. He's talking about how he's able to quickly forget the last point and just focus. And I think a reason why, I'm lucky and happy for you that you have this mindset of you're not afraid to fail. But a part of it has to do with society. We're programmed to, you've got to fit in this box. You've got to achieve this certain thing. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And if you don't, you're punished. You're a failure. You're not good enough. You don't graduate. Children hear on average 232 no's a day. So by the time you've reached adulthood, you're afraid to do anything wrong. We're programmed to fit into this lane. Don't do this, keep doing this, keep doing it. And we're afraid to step out of line. We're afraid to fail.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big part of why I think homeschooling is the way to go. I think like the programming that the kids get at that age is so crucial. And I mean, I know it from myself. Like, I don't really think that it was the right path for me to go to these institutions, and so I think it's a better way to actually control, what your children see and hear at that age. Maybe later on, let's see what happens. But
I think
for
if I had children, I think I would homeschool for the very same reasons.
yeah, totally.
Which is it's a big responsibility on you as a parent. I mean, you're trying to take care of your own life and become a school teacher. That can't be very easy.
Yeah, but I think, if you know what you're shit at, you can get help, right? I think that's the way to go. Like don't think you have to teach them everything. Like, it's not all on you. It's on you to organize it. It's on you to know what you don't know, and then, right, and then get help.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, because I mean, we have this interwebs here. Like, that's a beautiful thing about it, right? Like, there's opportunities, right? Like, you don't have to have the teacher locally, for example.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what a lot of parents forget, because that exact thought that you just had, it's that's mostly the first one that everyone thinks about. It's like, shit, how am I supposed to do that all by myself, right? And you're not by yourself, but like, you have to move, the bird's eye view, and like understand how this whole thing works, right? Like, you don't have to be the teacher for everything. And also, what is very important is, like, kids don't need 6 hours of education a day. Right? Like, if you have the right education at the right time, I think 2 to 3 hours. I've talked to some professionals about this, right? Like, they agree with this. Especially young kids, they have to be outside. They learn outside. Young boys learn outside by movement.
Yes.
Right. So that's the thing. You don't put them in front of a screen for 6 hours, 7 hours a day, and each subject, right? Like, that's why school is so wrong in so many ways, because that's not how they learn.
I agree. And some of the messages, going back to corporate America, the other challenge is not just the becoming a speaker, but it's trying to plant seeds in a system that has been established for so long, that has been doing something the same way. And it's sometimes, I promote innovation. It's very hard to show organizations and corporations there are other ways to do this. That's probably the biggest pain point that I experience.
Mm.
They all want change. They all want to be different. They all want to be new, but not really. That's a big challenge. And so
Exactly.
I have to dilute my message, because I think if you want a message to be heard, you have to meet the person where they are, which sometimes means I have to hold back.
Yeah. And give it at the right time, but which makes it very difficult, because you probably have keynotes, and then you have like 1-day workshops and stuff like that. Yes. And how are you gonna, promote that movement, right, when you don't have the time for it?
Because it's exactly it. So what I do is I tell myself I'm planting seeds that over time might grow, rather than ramming it down their face. This is what you need to do, and this is what I plant the seed, and sometimes 6 months later it will resonate, and sometimes not. That's all I can do.
Well, it's very difficult, because I imagine that creates a lot of confusion with people that actually embrace your message in the first place, right? Because if they've never thought about this, then they go home and they're like, shit, there's something else out there, right? Am I in the right spot? Am I doing the right thing? And then you probably would need to come in, a couple of weeks later and like help them navigate, right? Like, do companies like call you back and they say, man,
yes.
like, you come back?
Yes,
like, yeah,
absolutely. They're my favorite clients. They're the ones that I go in, I give a keynote, and as a result of the keynote, they realize, something shifted here. We want to continue the momentum. Can you come in and do a training? That's the optimum solution. The other thing that I try and do as a trainer and as a speaker is, I don't just like to give a series of steps. I believe, going back to children and education, I believe a lot of the learning is in the doing. So I like to create activities that become an experience, so that they experience the lesson rather than just reading it as a strategy. They experience it, they feel it. One of my signature, I'll give you an example. One of my signature things is this clown nose, right? So imagine you get a bunch of serious business people wearing suits, and I make them wear a clown nose. Right? Well, what happens in the room? For a brief moment, they
Yes.
forget they're an executive. They become childlike. Their ego goes out the window. They become more friendly. They become more receptive. So I haven't told them all the strategy. They felt it. That's some of the ways that I try to inspire people is if they can feel something, they can change. And I just
Yeah.
love watching people in suits being silly. It's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I know plenty of people, and once the night comes, it's the 180 degrees in the other way, right? Like it's just, yeah, and it's oftentimes not healthy habits as well attached to that, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. I mean, I don't know if I would ever go back into corporate, but yeah,
It's
it's very
interesting
interesting.
because the deeper I get into this personal development platform, the harder it is to still do corporate.
Mm,
I'm reaching a crossroads, and
mm,
I hope that corporate America doesn't hear this message. But I'm reaching a crossroads as to what I really, really, really want to be doing and who I want to touch and connect with. It's I'm gonna have to make a decision soon, a business
sure.
decision.
Yeah, I imagine it's a tough one because like just what we said before, you as a coach or a trainer, you want to see success with your client or with your student, right? Like that's what it's all about.
Yes,
And you see maybe even the potential with a certain person, but you cannot see it through because of the circumstance, right? So that's I think that I imagine that's a very tough one. And but yeah, I mean, do people that listen to your corporate keynote sometimes come back to you like in a private environment and they say,
yes,
okay, look, man, like I need some help here. Yeah, I imagine.
absolutely. And when I do a keynote, sometimes that's the most powerful moment. So if I do share some of my personal struggles. I also want to make, even if it's corporate America, I want empathy. Going back to empathy, if an employee is happy at work, they become a good employee, right? But for an employee to be good at work, you need to understand, well, who is that person as a human being,
Yeah.
right? How can I bring this person value? And then they are inspired to bring. So for me, it's basic. And sometimes that keynotes that I'm talking about these, standard operating procedures and customer service practices and all these corporate things, but I'll share some of my personal struggles just to show the journey of struggle and failure. And the most beautiful thing is, Max, when an executive will come to me, hug me in private, and say thank you for the personal
Mm.
message because they've experienced what I've talked. That's the true reward because selling product is great, but inspiring a human being to want to be better, oh, that's really the reward.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I think like because at first you don't think that your story is important to other people, right? Like that's how you basically start. And then you send those seeds out and then all of a sudden there's people coming back to you like, man, I experienced the same thing. Now you inspired me to also start a podcast, which I had just today or yesterday. Like a woman wrote that under another podcast. I'm like, yeah, there you go. That stuff makes sense already.
It does. And I
Right?
think
Like
we need
even
to
yeah,
go ahead, Max.
yeah, even though it doesn't make sense monetarily, right? Like for me, for example, this podcast, right? In that sense, it already made so much sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm gonna keep going with this for sure. Yeah, because that's what it's all about.
But what we talked about in the very beginning about success, yes, maybe this isn't immediate financial success, but if you are impacting people, that is
Yeah.
success too. So I completely get it. It's romantic, but it's valuable. I think being able
Yeah,
to inspire somebody is one of the most beautiful gifts you can give somebody.
for sure. For sure. I mean the word creator, right? Like in that media sense with the big tech companies, like it has this little feel to it, right? Like it's just someone pushing out dance videos and stuff like that. But like if you actually think about it, if you're an actual creator, right? Like you help, shift what we just talked about, right? Like you inspire, you're an
Yes,
inspiration to people, right? And you tell your story and somebody else can resonate and maybe that helps them change their life, right? Like that's a really beautiful thing actually.
absolutely. By the way, there's nothing wrong with dance videos. I put out a lot of dance videos.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, like,
I know
you
what
know,
you mean.
these shorts, you know, where there's like just these 12, 13-year-old kids, right? Like moving their ass, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
You know, this is also called a creator these days. But yeah, I mean, there's always levels to the game, you know, so yeah, exactly. Let's talk about your book. That's why you also wear pink today, probably, right?
Absolutely.
Why did you choose that color, and why did you write that book?
So the book is called Pink is the Color of Empathy. There are many reasons why I chose the color pink, and I'll share some of them. On a vibrational frequency level, I would imagine maybe you appreciate how things have an energy. Pink is not as bold and brazen as red, but it has a level of passion and drive. Pink also connects to the feminine. And so for me, empathy is a feminine trait in the sense of, and I don't want to be sort of divisive on a stereotypical sexuality level, but for the most part, the woman is the nurturer, the breastfeeding, the caring aspect. And so pink is the feminine, it's the sacred feminine. And I also believe that a strong man is connected, going back to a strong man protects. So really what I'm trying to get to do is men, connect with your inner feminine and be caring and nurturing. Don't be toxic. Be caring and nurturing. So that's the sort of subliminal energetic level. Going one step deeper, in sports, we talked about sports. There have been sports teams who have painted the opposing dressing room pink because it pacifies.
Mm.
They've put prisoners in pink outfits to pacify them. So for me, it's a color that brings a level of peace. That's that. And also in terms of branding, I wanted people to be curious as to, just like you did, what's with the color pink and empathy? I wanted there to be people asking the question. If I can have you ask the question, it means you're interested, and it means that maybe you'll want to learn.
Sure.
So I combine some logic, some emotional, some spiritual aspects, but really pink is about the sacred feminine and caring and nurturing and understanding. On a romantic level, I believe that if I have empathy for you, and I don't just mean you specifically, Max, I just mean in general, if I have empathy for somebody, it means that I'm trying to understand your experience, where you're coming from. If I can find understanding, it doesn't mean that I agree. But if I can find understanding, it becomes hard to condemn you for what you did. I can hold you accountable, but I can't hate you for doing something different than me. That's my romantic purpose of the book. I see war and injustice and oppression, and just understand each other. If you believe in God and they don't, just understand that that person doesn't and that you do, and then go about your happy life. You don't need to go to war. That's my utopian version of pink is the color of empathy.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense, I think.
Now, having said that, let me quickly elaborate, Max,
Sure.
about empathy is not a weakness. We also have to understand that empathy, for example, the FBI uses empathy during interrogations. So I want to be clear that empathy is not this soft, walk all over me quality. Empathy goes on a very deep psychological, fundamental level of human existence. I want to understand you. If I want to understand you, I've got to get into your head. So it can be used for negative, it can be used for good.
Yeah, just like anything that's profound, right? Like, I mean, I also learned it the hard way, you know, in that sense, because I had some empathy, but you know, I touched upon that before for people, and especially this one friend of mine, and you know, I let her live in my place, and it's also because she had a very similar childhood to yours, And I said, okay, she has the softness in her, but like on the outside, she's hard and stuff like that, and then I just had no boundaries with that, right? Because it was impossible. She was in my space,
Yeah.
right? And then you think, okay, fuck, like I'm actually empathetic to her, to what she's been through, but she's like, she doesn't give a fuck, in the
Yeah.
end. She just does her thing, right? Like, and then you're at the crossroads and you're saying, okay, am I gonna like build this wall up, and basically keep everyone out, or am I gonna still keep on being empathetic, but right, I have the boundaries and have my space and tell them to fuck off, when it's time, right?
So that's a very spiritual thing.
Yeah.
I understand why you did that. But this is it, Max. I understand why you did that.
Yeah.
You were hurt. You've had a painful. I understand it, but I'm still going to tell you to fuck off because I can't accept it. I can understand it, but I don't have to accept it, and that's the part of empathy that is really hard for people to understand.
Mm.
And sometimes when you do tell people, to get lost, they're like, "Yeah, but I thought you were empathetic." Well, I am.
Exactly. Well, it helps them, right, to learn and maybe to
Yes.
grow. Because if everybody always ducks under and like, just kind of disappears and never says anything, then they won't learn either. Yeah.
And to your point, Max, there are times when I have withdrawn from society because it was too much for me. I had to become reclusive because I didn't know how to handle it.
Mm.
There is great pain with being empathetic.
Mm.
It can be very painful. It can be exhausting. And sometimes you've got to listen to yourself. And if you are in a position where you do need to recharge, then that's what you need to do. And there's nothing wrong with it. If that means living in a cave for 6 months, then go and do it. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you do you first. Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you wrote many other books. Like, what would you say is your most impactful?
Right now, the most impactful is Pink is the Color of Empathy. And I'll briefly share why. Because of the feedback that I get of how it's changed people's lives. That's for me, wow. There are times I don't want to be too sentimental, but I get inbox messages. They make me cry because somebody has reached out in a moment of desperation and said, your book gave me enough understanding to continue.
Mm.
That for me is one of the most beautiful things that I could have done. So yeah, Pink by far. I mean, my first book was about child abuse and, my very quickly, my background, sexually abusive father, alcoholic mother, grew up in the English foster care system. I wrote a book about that. And at the time, that was the most meaningful thing to me because it was cathartic. But Pink is the Color of Empathy was a book I wrote for other people to really help other people because mental health is the modern pandemic. We ignore it. We pretend it's not there. Everybody's suffering in quiet. Social media, we pretend. Look at me. My life is fantastic. And behind the scenes, I'm crying. I'm alone. I'm lonely. And I wanted to address that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. Especially also perpetuated by COVID. All these kids looking to their phones, more screen time. Right, like I don't even want to know what's going to happen, like when they're adults, like especially the kids that were, 7 to let's say 12. I have a nephew that was in that phase. He had a very tough time, and yet I think there's going to be big issues coming up. So
Definitely.
for sure, I think that message is important and
unfortunately,
has to
Max,
be
I think
shared.
what's going to happen is we're just going to medicate these kids.
Oh yeah.
Rather than understanding them, trying to get to the root cause of why they behave. Just give them this medication. And that's another thing about society, which I think is dangerous, is because we don't address the root cause, it's easy to medicate. And so the problem just perpetuates. And then to your point, it gets passed on to the next generation. Because this is what I know. I never understood it. So I'm just going to do the same thing. And now my kids are going to suffer for it. And it just continues and continues and continues.
Yeah, modern medication and Western medicine is a big issue. surely it has its meaning and its place, right? Like for sure. But I think there's always a soft approach that's possible, right? For example, I'm doing a homeopathy, treatment at the moment again, right? Stop drinking coffee at the same time because it's an antidote. So always doing it at the same time, and surely I could take another route. I mean, I don't have like a big issue. It's like these little things that I'm still working on, right? But I think there's always an alternative route, always, and definitely medication is not the solution because just like you said, it doesn't take the problem by the root, right? Like it's just a kind of like a soft like tap on the top, and then it has all
Yes.
these issues that come with it that you don't really see in the beginning, right? But like it's gonna have these side effects for sure, right?
Yeah.
Anything from the pharmacy has a side effect. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
But as I say that, I'm not promoting anybody who's on medication. I'm not saying get off your medication. Like you said, it brings value,
yeah,
but do research other alternatives, maybe in harmony with each other, but to just rely on, like, for example, if I have a headache and I take an Advil, okay, my headache's gone, but maybe I just needed to hydrate. Maybe
yeah.
it was that simple. Maybe
And do
I'm
you,
eating something that's unhealthy.
yeah,
So,
and do you know what it did to your microbiome,
well, then there's that too.
right? Yeah, because people
Yes.
don't think about that kind of stuff. I think that's also a very important message. Like every pill has a side effect. Like especially like the microbiome is going to be attacked by these over the counter drugs, which are very accessible in the States. You go to like these fucking pharmacies on every corner, you get everything. Like, and if it's a prescription based medication, then you just get that prescription from Florida or whatever, right? Like it's it's not that
It's
difficult to access.
big business. I don't know what it's
Yeah,
like. I haven't been in Europe for a long time. I mean, I
yeah.
haven't lived in Europe for a long time. But to your point, Max, here the pharmaceutical industry is, I think it's dangerous because it's
Mm,
so accessible. It's so easy it's in fact, it's the easiest thing for a doctor. Hey, take this. And
yeah,
that's all they do. I think it's toxic.
yeah. It's a bit more restricted here, which which is good, I think, in many ways. But there are a lot of similarities, right? And I also know in the background that our system is being like overrolled, right? Like we have all these big investment companies like buying up practices, in the different medical fields, and it's not really visible yet, but I know it's
Yeah.
it's happening in the background. We have these private equity companies coming in and like basically just buying one by one. And Germany is a little bit different because it's kind of state controlled a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a different topic because it's also very corrupt. But yeah,
So the
it's
American influence is
hmm,
impacting Europe.
oh yeah, oh yeah. You
Yeah.
just have to see who controls Brussels. You know.
Well, yeah, technically Brussels is the capital of Europe, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean it's where all the legislation kind of apparently
Yeah.
comes from, right? But like you just if people don't, there's a lot of people that don't think about this kind of stuff, but like just on the surface, like just look who's the advisor to the certain minister or the government, right? And it's all the same companies now.
Right.
you
That's
know
right. Yes, it
and
is.
it's also happening in Europe now. They're just switching back and forth, from company position into like a government position, but going back and forth. I mean, we learned this from you guys over there, and I mean,
It
like,
generates billions of dollars.
yeah,
That's basically what it comes down to.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
originally I'm from Belgium. And so
yeah.
I kind of left Belgium. I miss Belgium, but there are a lot of things that I left Europe for very specific reasons. But some of the reasons why I left Europe are some of the reasons why I'm kind of looking to move back. Hopefully it doesn't
Mm.
become America too. Hopefully it doesn't.
Man, I think Europe is a tough one at the moment. We are on the verge of kind of flipping into the exact same system.
Yeah.
It's probably already here. I would say it just doesn't look like it yet because we still kind of have on the surface level we have the perception that it's different, but because we have these different languages, right? And then we think there's these different governments, and every government and each capital still has their say, but all these changes in legislation in the background happening right now, they are all moving to this one, this one world institution, right? Like
That's
if it's in
right.
Brussels or
Yes. The
so.
World Organization.
Yeah, it's all happening, right? And I mean, they're not really opposing it, and if there's someone opposing it, yeah, they're not really there for long. So, it's like,
And that's another part of my core messaging is the having the courage to defy mass, I can say mass control. If something doesn't align with you, have the courage to stand up for it. Don't fall into compliance because that's what you've been programmed to say. And that's not easy. It's not an easy message to share. It's not an easy life to live because it comes with great sacrifice.
absolutely. But I think that's part of living your truth,
Oh yeah, I love that. Living your truth.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that's a major pillar in being in your let's say divine masculinity, right? I think if you don't speak your truth, if you're always sugarcoating stuff, if you're not speaking your truth, if you might be lying at times, I think that damages your self-respect in many ways, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And then what happens after that? You don't trust yourself. What happens after that? Nobody else will trust you.
Ooh,
What
that's
happens
deep.
after that? You cannot be a leader in your family.
Wow, you're right. Absolutely.
That's how I see it. So I think it's important to talk about this. Surely we cannot go into depth because it's media, but it's important to at least not like bullshit yourself into thinking it's all right. Everything that goes on out there is all right. Because you always have a choice, right? Like you always have a choice. Like, am I gonna buy this Nestle product? Am I gonna buy this water where it says it's from Italy but it's from Africa, or am I gonna buy some local stuff and or maybe filter my own water or get a well, and like filter it and kind of enrich it and so on and so forth. Because
It's a
you
good
always have a
point.
choice.
You do have a choice, and it's a great point because I'm starting to implement more of those choices. The other day, I just posted on social media something trivial but important. So I went to buy watermelon, and I went to 3 different stores. I cannot find watermelon with seeds.
Mm,
So the only option is I have to research it, and I'm going to start now intentionally going to what's called farmers markets. Buy
yeah.
local, support small business, because I realize if I keep funding big industries, I don't have the choice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out there and pick it and rebel, but I can make these small choices to your point that, okay, I'm now going to change my lifestyle and start implementing these habits. I love your mindset on that one. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Watermelon is beautiful. It's from the cucumber family, which most people don't know.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, and I actually ate one for like the last week. We have a local farmer and we get it from hers, and it's exactly the same problem. They have seeds, right? And all the others that I buy, they also have seeds, but you can see the difference. One tastes a little bit like the cucumber,
Oh.
and the other one just tastes sweet, right? And that's how you can kind of defer. Okay, is this the real fruit or not, right?
So which one is the real? So the real one tastes more like cucumber.
Yeah.
Ah, that's good to
Yeah.
know. And I've also started growing my own herbs, and I literally 6 months ago I started growing my own tomatoes.
Mm.
There's
Yeah,
also
same
a
here.
health aspect, a very healthy aspect. When you touch soil,
Mm.
it actually stimulates, and I don't know the name of the hormone, but it stimulates feel good hormones in your system.
Yeah,
Touching earth.
oxytocin.
Thank you, oxytocin. That's exactly it,
Yeah.
the feel good hormone. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
making I'm
Yeah, go for it.
making those choices.
Gardening is amazing. So I'm also testing a little bit on the side because we bought some land like these past couple of years, and we're gonna maybe hopefully build a permaculture farm. But like just testing it, like at a small scale. We also have a little bit of fennel and herbs, obviously some tomato. Just got some potatoes out today,
I
but like
just
very
I
small
just
scale.
planted some sweet potato. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing. It gets you connected, right? And it gets you grounded if you have the right soil, and it's just different, right? Like if I do it as mostly because of the kids, right? To just like show them, okay, this is where the food actually comes from, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not from the supermarket, and you have to put time and effort into it to get the right nutrition, right? Sure, they, we take them to the supermarket as well, but like I think it's just important that they see everything right
Yeah.
from the beginning. So, because I mean, like with you guys, when I was in the States, sure, I would go to Whole Foods and like Trader Joe's and stuff like that, but like now it's part of the Amazon empire, so I'm sure it's not gonna take long until there's plenty of changes in there, right?
Well,
And
it's actually I shop at
Right.
Trader Joe's, and I was very disappointed that Trader Joe's didn't have organic watermelon, because you are supposed to be this farm style, healthy lifestyle type of supermarket. But to your point, it's all being slowly overtaken. It's very
Yeah,
sad.
totally.
So we have to
Yeah,
make
but
these very
also
conscious choices.
decisions there.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but what's also important is all these labels, like just because it's organic, it doesn't really mean that it is, right? Like you always double check, especially honey and stuff like that. They import that from China now, and it's nasty business.
So to that point, this surprises me how it's legal. So on the shelf, to your point, it can say honey, but really it's just fructose syrup, sugar.
Yeah.
But it can say honey. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. I spent some time in Colombia, and I've also traveled through the coffee farms and stuff like that, and I talked to the farmers, and it was an interesting time because that's how I learned. I mean, I knew about geopolitics beforehand, but like if you go to these countries in South America, for example, or Central America, then you see how it played out, right? Like in real life, it's like, okay, they were already growing their stuff organically, right? They had all the pesticides and the fertilizer in the plants, right? So they in the coffee plantation, for example, they would have these certain palm trees in between, right? They would give shade and like give the right amount of whatever the plants needed to the soil, right? So they wouldn't need to spray with anything. So then these companies came in that we all know about, right? And they came through the government, right? And then they pushed the agenda, and they basically forced them, or basically they said, okay, look, if you want your output to maximize, X by X, the ROI, is going to be X, and all you need is just to cut, all these trees that are in between, and then you get the super seed from us, and it's all going to be good. 1 year later, 2 years later, all the bugs come in, right? What do they need?
Pesticides.
Of course, they need the fertilizer and the pesticide from them, right? Like it's that business they were playing, and then all of these farmers lost their organic stamp, right? Like they couldn't sell it organic anymore.
Oh,
and then
wow.
by the time they realized it was too late. So then they had to, redo the whole farm, and they had to wait another 10 years of, each year they were being tested to get that organic stamp back.
Oh, that's painfully sad. I mean, that's sabotage by clever, sneaky design.
That's how it works, yeah.
But the same thing's happening here in the US. The independent farmers are basically being forced into corners where they can't stay afloat. They can't stay alive. It's a shame. It's a great shame. And it's becoming very hard to try and live a healthy lifestyle because we just don't have access to you've got to really bend over backwards. And that's what I'm learning to do. You've got to be very intentional of the lifestyle you want to live.
Yeah.
And it means making extra effort, extra research, but it's worth it.
Totally. Yeah, maybe you should look into vertical farming a bit, especially since you're in the desert. It's probably the only way for you to build anything. Yeah.
I'll research it, but it's very hard because of our climate. I mean, right now, today, July 4th, it's American Independence Day, by the way, which I don't really celebrate. So for me, this is just a day off where nobody is taking care of business. I can relax. But today's going to be in Fahrenheit, a record 118 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that maybe is 46 Celsius,
yeah,
maybe.
Too much. Yeah, you cannot go outside. That's what I'm saying. Vertical farms, you basically plant in the tower.
Yeah.
And that you can have inside. But then again, it's like, how much energy do you actually need to produce, X?
I'll look into it because this is an interesting, something worth exploring for me because of the lifestyle that I want to live.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can help you with, some info on that because I've researched quite a bit. I'm also, tested it and stuff. It's interesting. And I know that it also works like in the desert in Dubai. They've been testing it, and like these companies that I talked to, and it's definitely doable. In the end, it's just like, can you, like, is it feasible? Does it make sense, right? Like for you, right?
It does make sense to me in the sense that I want to live as healthy of a life as I can. Again, going back to mind, body, spirit. I want that life. I've always wanted that life. It's just becoming a little bit harder to do it. But again, know thyself. I know who I am. I know what I want. I know my expectations. And now I've got to make a decision. Am I going to make those efforts to achieve those objectives? And yes, I'm willing to do that little bit extra. And I didn't think of vertical farming. So a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah. It's probably the only thing that could work in a climate like yours, because it's indoors, right? And you can control whatever goes on. Amazing. Perfect, man. Thanks a lot for your time, Vital.
Hey, Max, it's been a pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing. I have a podcast too, but I'm glad that you are inspiring others.
True. You have it. Yeah,
Sigma. But that's right. But I'm glad that you're doing your thing, and I'm glad that you're inspiring people. And I'll say this: we didn't know each other. You reached out, and I went on your page, and instinctually, there was something about your vibe and your platform that I'm like, you know what? I have no idea who this guy is, but there's something about this guy that I resonate with. So I'm honored. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been an honor.
Thanks a lot for your time and for the kind words. Amazing.
Thank you, man. Stay connected. If I can be of value, reach out.
For sure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Max.
Thank you for watching this episode to the end. If you got any value out of this, please like and subscribe or share it with a friend. This would help the channel a lot. Thank you for that. And I hope I will see you on the next one.